Hello guys, bersama saya lagi dalam Alright Napa Channel terkini ya daripada Perdana Menteri kita dalam program Forum Madani tahun 2024. Dan apa yang lebih mantap adalah ucapan dan juga mesej daripada Perdana Menteri. Mungkin saya boleh berikan sedikit gambaran apabila Datuk Seri menyatakan bahawa Kerangka Madani ini adalah bersepadu, menggabungkan elemen keadilan, kebebasan, nilai dan mementingkan kemakmuran ekonomi dengan menyemangati idea dan juga cetusan nurani mantan Perdana Menteri Republik Indonesia Bapak Muhammad Nasir, yakni jangan membangun sambil meruntuhkan. Itu antara intipati. Tapi untuk lebih lanjut tu sahabat semua, saya ingin membawakan anda untuk mendengar ya ucapan daripada Perdana Menteri kita, tidak lain tidak bukan Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. Jadi tanpa buang masa, mari kita tonton video ini.
Saya ucap tahniah kepada IKIM kerana dapat menyelenggarakan satu persidangan global Madani dengan kerjasama badan-badan yang sealiran. Dan saya juga menyatakan penghargaan kepada Gerakan dari dalam negara dan luar negara yang turut menyertai. Dan untuk sesi ini, kehadiran rakan-rakan duta-duta besar dan pesuruhjaya tinggi yang turut bersama. Dan kebetulan kita bersidang dalam semangat hijrah seperti mana saya sebut malam tadi, tatkala meraihkan Syekh Dari dan Datuk Hasan Ahmad yang telah dikurniakan hadiah Ma'al Hijrah antarabangsa dan peringkat kebangsaan. Last night I alluded to the spirit of hijrah, the emigration of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Makkahul Mukarramah to Madinah al-Munawwarah, originally known as Yathrib. This has relevance to the whole concept of building a civilization. Building civilization must be premised from certain core principles and values. Is to reject the injustices, the oppression, the insanity, the perpetration of evil acts of the past. They connotes the understanding of Jahiliyah. And the analysis of the principle of Jahiliyah has been quite formidable. It's not Jahil in the sense of no understanding. They were poets. They were deemed to have some cultural practices and technology in that period. But it's still considered Jahiliyah because it connotes the absence of values and principles of justice and the propensity to embark and effect change. Thus, the emigration must be seen in the context of the spirit of Islah, the preparedness to undertake reform and tajdeed, to build a new society based on values, ethics, and of course, to be able to build a civilization. It is inclusive. It is very important. We tend to disregard this fact. Yes, it is led by the Prophet Muhammad SAW, but it is inclusive. Inclusive of Muslims and Christians and Jews and pagans. That was the ummatic concept in Madinah. There is ummat, Muslim, there's ummatic for the nation. The propensity to effect change. And this is somewhat disregarded by many of us when talking about the vast experience of Hijratul Nabi, because we confine ourselves to affairs affecting Muslims and the Muslim world. Well, it is relevant in the context Yes, because the Muslim world were colonized by the imperialist powers and colonized powers. There's every reason for them to react and respond against imperialism. But in most of these countries, including Malaysia or Indonesia, Algeria or Egypt or Iran, Iran may be predominantly Muslims, but most countries, the reaction was mainly, of course, led by Muslims because they formed the majority, but the participation is by all those who understand the values of freedom, the principle of justice, honor and dignity for every citizen. And for us to continue to benefit from this historical antecedents and experience, we have therefore to get the context right. Because the Madani notion and understanding cannot be exclusive. For a multiracial, multireligious country like Malaysia, predominantly Muslims, Islam is the religion of federation, but it has to be inclusive, such as the essence and the original spirit of the emigration, of the Hijrah to Nabi, that include the wise, the loyal companion Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the impeccable and learned and energetic young Ali bin Abi Talib, radhiyallahu anhu, a profound lady with strong commitment, Asma bint Abu Bakar, and even a non-Muslim, Abdullah Abu Uraiqah, because of his understanding, his knowledge and logistics between Mecca to Medina, a safe route for the Prophet and his early companions, in particular Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Why do we then disregard these issues and encourage discord, distrust? The premise must be total independence, freedom, justice, and core ethical and moral values. The message is وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. That must be the core component of the setup of this new Madinah society. Now, of course, as history has shown, there were traits of hypocrisy, rebellion, not only among the Jews or the Jewish tribes, or Aus and Khazraj, or maybe the Christians, but also among the Muslims. So the issue is therefore not between Muslim and non-Muslim discord, but between those who uphold the principles of justice and honor and dignity and independence and freedom, and those who betray those principles. I think this should be seen in the context of building a Madani society. Now, Madani society, of course, we relate also types of issues of knowledge and education, and now the challenge of digitalization and energy transition. But the change that we're talking about is both imperative and practical. Now, the Madani framework in our context is, of course, a cohesive principle of nationhood. Now, why do we promote these values from this continuation of the Asian Renaissance, for example? Because what is clearly evident to our understanding in our society in our experience, due to poor governance and corruption and abuse of power, arrogance among leaders, but it also is reflected in the international community. Where is the compassion? Where is the justice we're talking about? Where is democratic accountability in international order, international system? Take the political system, of course, Gaza comes to mind, the Palestinian plight, dispossession for decades. Why is there the absence of the whole commitment to democracy or justice or freedom? So there is a deficit. Leaders talk about issues of democracy or development or sustainability or now energy transition and digital transformation, but they seem to lack the core values and principles. So there is apparent inconsistency, contradiction, or to be exact, or to be precise, is hypocrisy. It is still molded in very racist, parochial, or fanatical religious viewpoints. And that's why I think there's a relevance for us to promote the whole Madani concept. It must be based on core values. Why do you reject Jahiliyah society in Makkah? Because it is parochial, it is tribal, it is unjust, it is oppressive. Then you build a new society. Why do you build an so-called international community with all these jargons and slogans? Because you want freedom, you want justice, but it must be based on compassion and consistency and coherence. But when you don't see these values being upheld, then we have a problem. There's a clear deficit. That's why even this debate, which to us, look at apartheid in South Africa. It took decades, not years, not one decade, decades to get the so-called elites to understand that you cannot discriminate based on color. Is that a reality? Yes. It's recent history. Nelson Mandela had to suffer the ignominy in prison for 27 years, called a terrorist, denied basic right, condemned by the world. Very few gave some regard. Of course, the Palestinians were one of the first to join them, support them as comrades. Of course, later, after sufferings of more than, almost a century of atrocity, of abuse, of all the evils one can think of, contrary to all the values that we promote. Only then you can have. But you know, the history of South Africa in the context of Madani is interesting. Because you have the blacks, you have the Muslims, you have the Hindus, you have the presence of Mohandas K. Gandhi, who actually started his struggle by looking at the atrocity not only in UK, in India, against the British, but against atrocities inflicted upon the blacks, the coloured in South Africa. It's quite universal, that sort of understanding. There you move. India had to struggle for, again, decades to achieve independence. And one of the most prominent, brilliant thinker, scholar, politician, and statesman, Winston Churchill. But when it comes to freedom and independence for India, he would consider and call in a condescending, derogatory manner Gandhi as semi-naked fakir. Yeah, because the dress is not of Western tradition, and therefore he's a fakir. Can you imagine? I mean, laughed at fact and appreciated and admired by many, not only in India but elsewhere, as a great figure, but condemned by one of the most brilliant statesmen that UK has ever produced. You see the contradiction. Where's the knowledge? Where's the wisdom? Where is the principle of justice? Where's democratic values? Is it for the whites only? But these are issues that is relevant. So I say there is a basic deficit here. I mean, I can go on about Gaza, Mali, Safir. I can go on. But you see, I mean, atrocious. Day after day, killings continue. Women and children. Oh, no. It's not a refugee camp. It's a miles away refugee camp. We're going after Hamas. I mean, the same sort of a narrative which would consider and treat human beings and the world as idiots and fools. And the killings continue. So, well, do we then just end by expressing despair? Or do we then, as a nation, take the bull by its horn and say, enough, and let us rebuild? And we rebuild from the beginning, from the start, from our own community, from our own society and nation. The nation must be strong, united, formidable, politically, economically, socially, culturally, getting everyone involved. Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Chinese, or Indians, or Dayaks, or Kadazans. That is the spirit that can build the new Madani. Now, do we can hope to resolve the problem of the world? No, it's still beyond us. But we do have to start somewhere. You recall, some of you, of course, very familiar, those senior Abim leaders, the dialogue, the debate in Egypt between Khalid, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with Muhammad al-Ghazali. In that state of confusion, apa yang dibicarakan sebagai kegalauan pikiran dan ide dalam keadaan pertembungan di antara nilai barat dan timur dan ke arah mana, hala tuju kemerdekaan kita dan kemajuan negara, maka dia mengatakan dalam keadaan galau dan keliru dan kacau, min huna nabda, from where do we start? You see, this great scholar is not able to have that confidence to say that we have the solution. Because, as you have seen the theory of Abdul Rahman ibn Khaldun in the Muqaddimah, however one fights against the big power or the colonial power, the imperialist power, at times, and oftentimes, you feel too inferior. You like to behave like them, dress like them, speak like them, and finally attempt to accept their ways and their values. That is called a colonial mentality. Or Hussein al-Attas referred to as the captive mind. The mind is captive. Or Muhammad al-Ghazali, who answered with min huna na'lam, talks about استعمار روحي وفكري. You see, imperialism of the mind and thought. So you have to have this sort of independence. The whole hijrah was essentially a move leaving the past men of thought, faith, values, tribalism, inflicting so much, I think, wrong and discrimination and oppression of women, disregarding women's rights. I mean, that was the past in the Jahiliyyah order. And you have to bring about this change. And this change was never easy. Never easy. So, in this battle must be fought with faith, values, and understanding. So, the response by Muhammad al-Ghazali is, to my mind, very profound. We must start with proper understanding of knowledge and wisdom. Min huna na'lam. Last night, the Sheikh Muhyiddin at Sri Perdana mentioned about the need for deeper understanding, pencerahan, pahaman yang lebih mendalam. Kita boleh bicara Madani, kita boleh bicara Islam, kita boleh bicara kebangsaan, kita boleh bicara Melayu atau ketuhanan Melayu. Tanpa kefahaman mendalam, dia akan menjadi kupasan yang dangkal. Islam akan menjadi bahan untuk meremehkan orang lain, menghukum, memperbodohkan, dan tidak untuk mengangkat martabat mereka. Kaum menjadi alasan bagi kelompok yang berkuasa atau bercita-cita tinggi memperalatkan isu kaum, menakutkan mereka supaya mereka boleh merampok sebanyak mungkin. Ini yang berlaku di banyak negara-negara berkembang, termasuk negara-negara Islam. That religion has been used, exploited to benefit a small group in the era of ignorance. But we talk about hijrah. Hijrah is a whole battle against ignorance. It's the age of ignorance. Hijrah is a battle against the Jahiliyyah order. How is it that we have this independence of a new Madani society, we still promote traits of ignorance? It runs contrary to the soul spirit of Madani. So, my dear friends, brothers and sisters, I have somewhat refrained from talking about global and international, because I think the last day, from Muhammad Noor to Stephen to Jimli Siddiqui and so many other scholars, you have better expertise in dealing with this. And therefore I come back to the kampung. For where do we need to start? And we start with wisdom. We start with pencerahan. We start with knowledge. We start with total commitment to the values of sustainability, of care, of compassion, of respect, of innovation, of prosperity and trust that actually transcend cities, race, even nation-state aspirations. So how do then we actualize these ideals? The challenge is, of course, actualization of the ideals. You hear all the time how just is Islam, how beautiful it is, how nice to be able to, aspire. But when it comes to the core challenges, we have a problem. Because is they still devoid of real understanding. And this is a challenge. I'm telling you, I happen to be now entrusted to become Prime Minister. I'm telling you, the major issue in this country is how to communicate more effectively. Here is our attempt to have a Madani concept. Justice for all. When you say justice for all, look, Anwar therefore is now neglecting the interests of the Malays and the Muslims, because he says for all. Now, can you be effectively a leader of a nation and say that you want justice for some and condemn the rest? It's insane. But that is the narrative those days. If you talk about the need to ensure there's justice in education or health, I mean, the majority will benefit. The majority are Muslims. The majority that are poor are still Muslims, which means enough additional effort must be geared for them. But it should not be a zero-sum game. We don't need to talk about helping one sector at the expense of the other, but instead looking at it simultaneously. So that is what, when I say equitable, transparent, and better governed nationally, the same principle applies for the global architecture. People are waiting. Where is this example that you treat when Muslims are in the minority, you be fair to them? When the Buddhists are a minority, you be just to them? When the Hindus or Christians in the minority, we are just to them. Then we be litakunu shuhada'a 'ala nas. That is the ummatan wasata. I remember Al-Kharadawi when he talked about this wasatiyah and giving this interpretation of the Quranic verse, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. I mean, very clear. Unless we come out and showcase that they were united, that we are not corrupt, we govern our societies well, we're inclusive, we are just to all, will never be seen as an example for the rest. Shuhada ala nas. And we cannot expect the blessings from the Prophet, وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. So that is my central message. After listening to the conclusion of the conference, I decided again to ignore my text. And I think, as Naim had told me, he said to me, it's better to speak from the heart. But speak from the heart, Naim Siddiqui, can be very painful. It can be a strain on the heart. But I would certainly take this opportunity to express my profound gratitude and thanks to Ikim and all the friends who have given their support. This venture has to go on. We have to continue this effort. We should never feel that we can't do it, because if the only choice we have is either success or disaster, maka dalam memperjuangkan semangat madani ini, kita mengharapkan ya harus ada kemampanan, kerana ekonomi juga fundamental. Kalau ekonomi tidak berkembang, rakyat sengsara. Tetapi dalam mengembangkan ekonomi, saya selalu ingat gesaan dan pesan Bapak Muhammad Natsir. Jangan membangun sambil merobohkan. Kita bangun gedung dan industri, tapi kita robohkan kemanusiaan dan nilai moral dan akhlak dan menindas yang di bawah. Itu pahaman kita tentang kemampanan. Tetapi kita juga terima kenyataan, kalau Malaysia Madani harus juga menerima kenyataan persekitaran dan iklim harus segar. Maka hindari kerusakan dan fasad. Dengan kerusakan bumi, maka ada transisi tenaga, peralihan tenaga, energy transition. Dan kalau negara ini mau diangkat keupayaannya, anak-anak muda harus menguasai dan meneroka dan menggapai yang di langit ilmu-ilmu baru yang disebut digital dan AI, supaya dapat kita menguasai dan menjadi contoh yang baik. Mudah-mudahan semangat madani ini dapat kita kekalkan dan diberkati Allah SWT. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terbaik sahabat semua, itu dia mesej daripada Perdana Menteri kita dalam forum global madani ini. Terbaik. Jadi saya harap ya kita dapat belajar sesuatu ya daripada pencerahan dan juga mesej yang disampaikan oleh Perdana Menteri kita, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. Jadi sahabat semua, terima kasih sehingga sini saja. Ya, sekiranya memberikan sebarang komen, pandangan, Anda boleh berikan di dalam ruangan komen, tapi ingat komen dengan cara berhemah. Jadi izinkan saya untuk mengundurkan diri dan seperti biasa peribahasa mengatakan tapak kangkap 2 ton keinginan. Dalam bahasa Melayunya, tepuk dada, tanya selera. Sekian saja daripada Alright Nampak Channel. Saya kita berjumpa lagi. Bye-bye.